In the heart of the English countryside stands a ring of colossal stones. They are silent sentinels, witnesses to 5 millennia of sunrises. Older than the Great Pyramids of Giza, older than the first written words, Stonehenge is a masterpiece of prehistoric engineering. Its creators left no records, no texts to explain their monumental ambition. How did a Neolithic people, with only the simplest tools, quarry and transport these multi-ton giants across hundreds of miles? Was this a temple to the sun, a celestial observatory, a sacred burial ground for kings, or something else entirely, a purpose we have long forgotten? For thousands of years, it has guarded its secrets. It stands not just as a monument of stone, but as a monument to one of history's most profound and enduring mysteries. We can touch the stones, we can measure their alignments, but we cannot hear the story they were built to tell. Before the first stone was ever moved, before the first ditch was ever dug, there was the land. For thousands of years, the Salisbury Plain was a vast, wind-swept canvas of rolling chalk hills and open sky. It was a landscape shaped not by human hands, but by ice and time. Yet, something about this specific place called to the ancient people of Britain. Long before the iconic silhouette of Stonehenge broke the horizon, this was already sacred ground. Our story begins not with architects, but with hunters. Around 10,000 years ago, in the Mesolithic period, nomadic groups followed herds of aurochs and red deer across this plain. They left behind little more than flint tools and the faint traces of their campfires. But they also left a riddle. Near the future site of the Great Monument, archaeologists discovered a series of large pits arranged in a line. Within them, they found pine posts, erected around 8000 BCE. They were not part of a building. They stood alone, like silent sentinels. Were they totem poles, marking a clan's territory? Were they astronomical markers, aligned to some long-forgotten celestial event? We do not know. But we know this. Even then, this spot was special enough to be marked. Millennia passed. The hunters gave way to the first farmers. Around 3500 BCE, a new and far grander project began. A colossal earthwork known as the Cursus was built. It is a massive enclosure, nearly 2 miles long and 100 yards wide, defined by a parallel set of ditches and banks. Its scale is almost impossible to comprehend. It required a massive, coordinated labor force, moving tens of thousands of tons of chalk with nothing more than antler picks and shoulder blades. Its purpose remains one of Britain's greatest archaeological mysteries. It was not a fortification. It seems to have been a ceremonial pathway, perhaps a barrier separating the world of the living from a sacred domain reserved for the spirits of the ancestors. It established the entire area as a vast ritual landscape, a destination for pilgrimage and ceremony. The land was becoming a focal point for people across the region, and even beyond. The evidence lies in the graves of those buried nearby, like the Amesbury Archer, a man who lived around 2300 BCE. Analysis of his teeth shows he grew up far away, in the alpine regions of Central Europe. He was buried with gold and copper, signs of immense wealth and status. He, and others like him, traveled hundreds of miles to this place. The plain was calling. It was a center of power, of belief, of community. The stage was set. The people were gathering. An idea was forming, an ambition that would soon take shape, not in stone, but in the very earth itself. The year is approximately 3000 BCE. The people of the Salisbury Plain embark on a new, monumental undertaking. This first great act of creation is not a feat of masonry, but of earth-moving. With tools fashioned from the bones and antlers of deer, they begin to reshape the landscape, to impose a perfect circle upon the wild chalk downland. This is the birth of Stonehenge, but not the Stonehenge we know today. This is Phase 1. They dig a massive circular ditch, more than 300 feet in diameter. The work is immense, a testament to a society with a powerful, unifying purpose. Thousands of tons of chalk are quarried by hand and piled up to form an internal bank. This was not a fortress meant to keep people out, but a henge, a sacred enclosure designed to bring people in, to separate a holy space from the mundane world outside. Its entrance was precisely aligned with the midsummer sunrise, the first clear indication that this was a place deeply connected to the cosmos. But the true mystery of this first phase lies within the bank. Here, the builders dug a ring of 56 evenly spaced pits. For centuries, their purpose was unknown, until they were rediscovered in the 17th century by the antiquarian John Aubrey, who gave them his name, the Aubrey Holes. What were they for? For a long time, it was believed they held a great circle of wooden posts, a kind of wood henge that preceded the stones. But modern archaeology has revealed a more profound purpose. Excavations of the Aubrey Holes have uncovered the cremated remains of at least 63 different individuals, men, women, and even children. This discovery transformed our understanding of the monument. In its earliest form, Stonehenge was a cemetery. It was a place for the dead, a final resting place for the elite, a communal mausoleum. The 56 pits were not post holes, but individual grave sites, each perhaps holding the ashes of a founding family or a revered elder. This was a city of the ancestors, a place where the world of the living could connect with the world of the spirits. For 500 years, this circle of earth and bone stood as the primary monument on the plain. It was a place of ritual, of remembrance, and of astronomical observation. But the vision of its creators was not finished. A new generation was rising, one with an ambition that would stretch across mountains and seas. They looked upon the circle of their ancestors and imagined something more, something permanent, something magical. They were going to bring the mountain to the plain. Around 2500 BCE, a revolutionary change comes to Stonehenge. The era of earth and wood is over. The age of stone begins. But the new builders do not turn to the abundant sandstone found nearby. Instead, they make a decision that has puzzled archaeologists for centuries. They choose a very specific, very rare, and very distant type of rock. They choose bluestone. These are the smaller stones of the monument, yet they are its ancient heart. When freshly broken or wet with rain, they reveal a deep, blue-gray color, flecked with white. They are geologically alien to the Salisbury Plain. Composed of dolerite, rhyolite, and volcanic ash, they are stones born of ancient fire, igneous rocks from a land of mountains and mist. The original plan was to erect them in a complex double arc at the center of the henge. 82 of these pillars, each weighing between 2 and 4 tons, were to form the new core of the sacred site. The question that echoes through the ages is, why? Why these specific stones? Why undertake a journey of almost unimaginable difficulty to acquire them? The answer must lie in the beliefs of the people who built it. To them, these were not just building materials. The bluestones must have possessed a unique power, a sacred quality that made them worth any price. Some theories suggest they were believed to have healing properties. In Welsh folklore, the Preseli Hills, the source of the stones, are associated with magic and mythical figures. Perhaps the stones were thought to be imbued with the life-giving spirit of that distant, sacred landscape. Another intriguing possibility lies in their acoustic properties. When struck, some of the bluestones ring with a clear metallic tone, like a bell or a gong. It is possible that Stonehenge was not just a visual spectacle, but an auditory one. Imagine a ceremony where these stones were played like a giant lithophone, their resonant sounds echoing across the plain, calling the community to worship or the ancestors to listen. This was a deliberate, specific choice. The builders bypassed countless other sources of stone, some much closer and easier to obtain, to get these exact rocks. The blue stones were not a matter of convenience, they were a matter of profound importance. They were the physical embodiment of a belief system we can no longer read, a geological link between two of the most sacred landscapes in ancient Britain. The decision was made. The stones were chosen. Now, they had to be brought home. The Preseli Hills of West Wales, a rugged, ancient landscape scarred by outcrops of hard, igneous rock. It is here, nearly 200 miles from Salisbury Plain as the crow flies, that the most astonishing chapter of the Stonehenge story begins. For decades, geologists and archaeologists worked to solve the puzzle of the bluestones. By carefully matching the mineral composition of the stones at the monument to rock formations across Britain, they finally found the exact source, a series of specific quarries, including Carn Godog and Craig Rossi Phelan. The evidence is unmistakable. The question was no longer where they came from, but how they got there. How did a Neolithic people, with no wheels and no draft animals, transport 80 multi-ton stones across such a vast and difficult terrain? The leading theory is a feat of human endurance and ingenuity that borders on the superhuman. The process would have started at the quarry. Using stone hammers and perhaps fire and water to crack the rock, they prized the pillars from the mountainside. Then came the journey. They would have moved the stones overland, likely on wooden sledges rolling over a track of logs, to the headwaters of the river Cleddau. From there, the stones were probably loaded onto massive rafts, perhaps 2 log boats lashed together, for a perilous journey downriver and into the Bristol Channel, a body of water known for its ferocious tides. If they survived the sea voyage, they would have navigated up rivers like the Avon, bringing them closer to their destination. The final leg of the journey was another arduous overland haul, dragging the stones across the rolling hills to the Salisbury Plain. The entire expedition would have been a monumental undertaking, requiring hundreds of people, immense social organization, and a shared belief powerful enough to sustain them through years, perhaps even decades, of back-breaking labor. An alternative theory once suggested that glaciers did the heavy lifting, carrying the stones from Wales and depositing them on Salisbury Plain during the last ice age. But the evidence points overwhelmingly to human hands. The stones come from very precise locations, not the random mix a glacier would leave. And archaeologists have found signs of Neolithic activity at the Welsh quarries, including stone tools and loading platforms. This was no accident of nature. It was a pilgrimage of stone, a deliberate act of will. They were not just moving rocks, they were transplanting a piece of their ancestral, sacred homeland to their new ceremonial center. The bluestones arrived, each one a testament to an epic journey, ready to form the heart of the Great Circle. The arrival of the bluestones was a triumph, but they were merely the prelude to the main event. Around 2500 BCE, the same time the bluestones were being erected, an even more ambitious project began. This phase would create the iconic image of Stonehenge known throughout the world. It was time to raise the giants, the Sarsen stones. Sourced from the Marlborough Downs, a chalk ridge about 20 miles north of the site, these are colossal blocks of silicified sandstone. They are incredibly hard and durable. They are also incredibly heavy. The uprights of the Great Outer Circle weigh an average of 25 tons. The monoliths of the central Trilithon horseshoe are even larger, with the tallest standing nearly 30 feet high and weighing over 40 tons. Transporting and erecting these stones presented an engineering challenge on a scale previously unseen. First, the stones had to be shaped. Using heavy stone balls known as mauls, the builders painstakingly pounded the surfaces of the sarsens, dressing them to create relatively flat faces and regular shapes. Incredibly, They carved sophisticated woodworking joints into the solid rock. The tops of the uprights were given protruding tenons, which would slot perfectly into mortise holes carved into the underside of the horizontal lintel stones. To ensure the lintels of the outer circle fit together in a smooth curve, they were shaped with tongue and groove joints. This was the work of master craftspeople, applying the logic of carpentry to megalithic architecture. Then came the transport. Moving a 40-ton block over 20 miles of uneven terrain required immense manpower and precision. It is believed hundreds of people, using a system of wooden rollers, sledges, and strong ropes, would have pulled the stones along a prepared route, a journey that could have taken months for a single stone. The final act was the erection. To raise an upright, a massive pit was dug, with one vertical side and one long sloping ramp. The stone was dragged down the ramp until its base tipped into the hole. Then, with teams pulling on ropes and others using large timber levers, the monolith was slowly heaved into a vertical position. Raising the 10-ton lintels to a height of over 20 feet was perhaps the greatest challenge of all. The most likely method involved building a huge timber platform or a gradually rising crib of logs next to the uprights, allowing the lintel to be slowly levered upwards, inch by inch, until it could be maneuvered into place. The circle rose, stone by stone. It was a masterpiece of Neolithic engineering, a perfect fusion of brute force and intellectual genius. A monument aligned with the sun, built to last for eternity. The great work was complete, a stone testament to a forgotten faith. And with the final lintel set in place, a silence fell, leaving only the wind and a question that would puzzle the world for the next 5,000 years. Why? Around 2500 BCE, a new chapter began on Salisbury Plain, one defined by ambition on an unimaginable scale. The era of the small, distant bluestones was over. A new wave of construction commenced, dwarfing everything that had come before. This was the age of the Sarsens. These were not mere stones. They were monoliths, titans of silica-cemented sandstone, some weighing more than 40 tons. Their journey to the sacred site was a testament to a society with a powerful, unifying vision. Their source has been traced with remarkable precision to a place called West Woods on the Marlborough Downs, a grueling journey of over 20 miles. Unlike the bluestones, which may have been transported partly by water, the Sarsens had to be moved entirely over land. The landscape between West Woods and the monument is not flat. It is a challenging terrain of rolling hills and valleys. The question of how is one that has baffled engineers for centuries. There were no wheels, no draft animals capable of pulling such immense loads. The prevailing theory suggests a colossal human effort, using wooden sledges rolling over a track of logs. Hundreds, perhaps thousands, of people would have been needed for each stone, pulling with ropes of twisted plant fiber or animal hide, inching the giants across the countryside. It would have been a slow, arduous procession, a monumental project taking years, perhaps even decades to complete. This feat suggests a profound shift in the society that oversaw Stonehenge. It speaks of a centralized authority capable of organizing and sustaining a massive labor force, feeding them, housing them, and keeping them dedicated to a single purpose. This was not the work of a small tribe. It was the project of a nation. Once the stones arrived at the site, the work was far from over. They were not erected as rough, natural pillars. Instead, they were meticulously shaped and dressed, an act of prehistoric masonry that is astonishing in its sophistication. Using heavy stone balls, known as mauls, the builders pounded and chipped away at the Sarsens, smoothing their surfaces and creating the precise shapes needed for their grand design. The ground around the monument would have been a hive of activity, filled with the percussive sound of stone striking stone, a constant rhythm of creation. They were preparing the components for an architectural masterpiece, shaping the very bones of the earth to build a temple to the sky. The stage was set, the colossal actors were in place, but the greatest act of this prehistoric drama was yet to come. The Salisbury Plain held its breath. The colossal sarsen stones, shaped and prepared, lay upon the chalky earth. Now came the challenge that defied logic, to raise these 40-ton giants from the horizontal to the vertical, and to do so with pinpoint accuracy. This was not brute force. It was a masterclass in Neolithic engineering, a ballet of leverage, friction, and gravity. Experimental archaeology has shown us how it was likely accomplished. First, a massive pit was dug for each upright, with one side vertical and the other a long, gentle ramp. The base of the stone was then slid carefully into the pit, resting against the vertical wall. The moment of truth would have been a spectacle of coordinated power. Hundreds of people, pulling on thick ropes attached to the top of the stone, would begin to haul. It's likely they used large wooden A-frames as levers to help initiate the lift. Slowly, painstakingly, the monolith would begin to rise, pivoting on its base. As it reached a critical angle, gravity would become an ally, helping to pull it the rest of the way into its socket, where it would be secured with a packing of smaller stones. But raising the uprights was only half the battle. An even more perplexing feat was to come: lifting the lintels. These were smaller, but still weighed around 7 tons each, and they had to be placed atop the uprights, over 15 feet in the air. One theory suggests the builders constructed enormous earthen ramps, dragging the lintels up the slope. A more widely accepted idea is that they built massive timber platforms or scaffolds around the uprights, lifting the lintels incrementally with a system of levers and props, raising them a few inches at a time. It would have been a slow, nerve-wracking process, requiring immense stability and patience. What makes this achievement truly astounding is the joinery. These were not simply rocks balanced on top of each other. The builders carved protruding tenons on the top of the uprights and matching mortise holes into the underside of the lintels, creating a perfect, interlocking joint. It's a technique taken directly from woodworking, applied to stone on a monumental scale. For the outer circle, they went even further, using tongue and groove joints to slot the lintels together, creating a smooth, stable, continuous ring. This reveals a level of planning and foresight that is simply breathtaking. They were not just building a circle, they were creating a single, unified architectural structure designed to endure for millennia. The giants were standing, a testament to human ingenuity and will. To step inside the completed circle of sarsens is to enter another world. The chaotic sounds of the outside world fall away, replaced by a profound sense of order and stillness. This was not just a collection of stones, it was a meticulously designed space, an architectural experience crafted to evoke awe and focus the mind. It was a cathedral of stone, built long before the first cathedrals we know. The builders' attention to detail was extraordinary. They understood perspective and aesthetics. The upright stones of the outer circle were not uniform. They were subtly shaped, wider at the bottom and tapering towards the top, enhancing their appearance of height and stability. The lintels that sat atop them were not straight, but were carefully curved to follow the line of the circle, creating a perfect, unbroken ring when viewed from the center. The inner faces of the stones, those that would be seen by participants in a ceremony, were generally smoother and more finely worked than the outer faces. This was an architecture for people, designed to be experienced from within. The 5 great trilithons of the inner horseshoe were arranged by height, rising in stature towards the center, drawing the eye upwards and inwards towards a central focal point. The sheer verticality of the design creates a powerful connection between the earth and the sky. The acoustics within the circle would have been unique. Sound would have reflected off the massive stone surfaces, creating echoes and resonances that would have amplified chants, music, or the spoken word. A ceremony held within this space would have been an immersive sensory experience, the voices of priests or leaders carrying with an almost supernatural authority. This monumental undertaking could only have been achieved by a society with a powerful shared belief system and a sophisticated social structure. It was a symbol of their identity, their power, and their place in the world. Just as a medieval cathedral declared the glory of its faith and the wealth of its city, Stonehenge announced the capabilities and spiritual devotion of its builders to all who saw it. And at the heart of their new, grand design, they carefully placed the older, sacred bluestones, rearranging them in a circle and a smaller horseshoe. Their spiritual power had not been discarded. It had been incorporated, enshrined within the new, grander temple, bridging the old world with the new. This great stone cathedral was not placed randomly upon the landscape. Its position was chosen, and its structure was oriented, with a purpose that reached far beyond the earth. Stonehenge was built to engage in a silent, eternal dialogue with the cosmos. For centuries, visitors have observed its most famous secret. On the longest day of the year, the summer solstice, the rising sun appears as a perfect orb of light directly over the heelstone as viewed from the center of the circle. The monument's main axis is a celestial sightline, a carefully engineered channel that captures the sun at a key moment in its annual journey. This is the foundation of archaeoastronomy, the study of how ancient peoples understood and incorporated the sky into their lives and monuments. The solstice alignment is too precise to be a coincidence. It reveals that the builders were patient and methodical astronomers. They possessed a deep, generational knowledge of the sun's path, tracking its movements throughout the year to identify these two extreme points in the sky, the summer and winter solstices. This knowledge was not merely academic, it was fundamental to their survival. The sun's cycle governed the seasons, dictating when to plant crops, when to harvest, and when to prepare for the lean months of winter. Stonehenge may have functioned as a monumental calendar, a reliable clockwork of stone and light that anchored the community's agricultural and ritual year. But the sun may not have been its only focus. In the 1960s, astronomer Gerald Hawkins proposed that Stonehenge was a complex astronomical calculator, capable of predicting lunar events and even eclipses. He identified dozens of alignments with the moon's rising and setting positions, particularly the major and minor lunar standstills, an 18.6-year cycle. While many of his specific claims are now debated, the core idea that the moon was also important to the monument's builders holds strong. The moon, with its own intricate cycles, was just as vital as the sun, governing the tides and the passage of months. Whether a precise computer or a more general symbolic temple, the conclusion is inescapable. The people who built Stonehenge did not see themselves as separate from the universe. They saw the movements of the sun and moon as a divine rhythm, and they built this extraordinary monument to honor it, to participate in it, and to align their own earthly existence with the grand, celestial order. While the summer solstice sunrise captures the modern imagination, compelling evidence suggests that for the builders of Stonehenge, the opposite moment in the calendar was the main event. As the year descended into its darkest, coldest point, the monument offered not a vision of beginnings, but a powerful promise of renewal. On the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year, the setting sun aligns perfectly through the heart of the monument, its last rays shining through the central arch of the Great Trilithon. For a people living on the edge of survival, this moment was everything. It was the turning point, the celestial guarantee that the sun was not dying, but would begin its long journey back, bringing with it the return of light, warmth, and life. This was not a moment for quiet observation. It was a reason for the largest celebration of the year. The key to understanding this lies 2 miles away, at a site called Durrington Walls. Here, archaeologists uncovered a vast Neolithic settlement, a village of hundreds of houses, contemporaneous with the Sarsen phase of Stonehenge. It is widely believed to be the place where the builders lived, but the evidence suggests it was also a place for monumental feasting. Excavations revealed enormous quantities of animal bones, particularly from pigs. Analysis of the bones shows the animals were slaughtered at a specific age, consistent with a large-scale, organized feast taking place in midwinter. The scale is staggering, suggesting thousands of people gathered here from across Britain and even continental Europe. A compelling theory has emerged, connecting the two sites. Durrington Walls, with its timber circles and evidence of feasting, was the land of the living. Stonehenge, the domain of stone and permanence, was the realm of the ancestors. The theory suggests a grand pilgrimage. People would travel for weeks to gather at Durrington Walls to feast and celebrate. Then, on the day of the winter solstice, they would process along a ceremonial avenue to Stonehenge to witness the celestial miracle, the rebirth of the sun. The monument was the final, sacred destination, the stage for the most important ritual in their calendar. It transformed Stonehenge from a mere observatory into a vibrant center of cultural and spiritual life, a place of pilgrimage that united people across the island in a shared act of hope against the winter gloom. For centuries, the identity of Stonehenge's creators was shrouded in myth. Legends attributed the work to Merlin the wizard, or to giants from a forgotten age. Later theories proposed Roman engineers or Danish invaders. Even the Druids, the Celtic priests who arrived in Britain 2,000 years after the last stone was raised, were given the credit. But modern science has swept these fantasies aside, revealing a far more profound truth. The builders were not mythical beings, but people of the Neolithic and early Bronze Age. They were Britain's first farmers, pioneers who had, generations earlier, brought agriculture from the continent, transforming the landscape from wild forest to managed fields. Archaeological evidence paints a picture of a sophisticated, well-organized society. Building Stonehenge was not the work of a small band of laborers. It required the coordinated effort of thousands. This was a project that spanned more than a millennium, passed down from generation to generation. It demanded quarry masters to select the stones, engineers to plan their transport, and a massive workforce to haul, shape, and erect them. Skeletons unearthed near the site tell us more about these individuals. They were robust and muscular, their bones showing the telltale signs of a life of hard physical labor. They suffered from ailments common to the era, worn joints, dental problems, and healed fractures. Yet they were also a people connected to a wider world. Isotope analysis of their teeth reveals that many were not local to the Salisbury Plain. They came from Western Wales, the very source of the bluestones, and from even further afield. This was not a project built by an enslaved population under the whip of a pharaoh. The evidence suggests a collective will, a society united by a powerful belief system. They were pilgrims, volunteers, people drawn to this sacred place to contribute to a monumental undertaking. They brought their skills, their labor, and their devotion. What kind of faith, what shared vision, could inspire such a colossal, multi-generational effort? The answer lies not just in the stones themselves, but in the community that gathered to raise them, a community that needed a place to live, to feast, and to prepare for their sacred work. For every great cathedral, there must be a town. For every pyramid, a city of workers. For generations, the question for Stonehenge was, where did its thousands of builders live? The answer was hidden in plain sight, just 2 miles northeast, buried beneath a vast circular earthwork known as Durrington Walls. For years, it was thought to be just another henge, but in the early 21st century, extensive excavations led by archaeologist Mike Parker Pearson revealed something extraordinary: the remains of a sprawling Neolithic settlement, a lost city of the living. As archaeologists peeled back the layers of earth, a vibrant community came to life. They uncovered the floors of hundreds of small, circular houses, their wooden walls and thatched roofs long since gone. Inside, they found the ghostly outlines of domestic life, central hearths for warmth and cooking, post holes indicating where wooden furniture, perhaps beds and dressers, once stood. This was no temporary work camp. It was a substantial village, possibly the largest in northern Europe at the time. The most astonishing discovery was the evidence of immense feasting. Archaeologists unearthed a staggering number of animal bones, primarily from pigs. The patterns of butchery show they were prepared for massive gatherings, likely held during the midwinter solstice. This was a place of celebration, of community, of life. At the heart of Durrington Walls stood its own timber circles, mirroring Stonehenge in their astronomical alignments. The southern circle, for instance, was perfectly aligned with the midwinter sunrise, the moment the sun begins its return journey and days start to lengthen. It was a monument made of wood, a material that decays and disappears, representing the temporary world of the living. This discovery transformed our understanding of the entire landscape. Stonehenge was not an isolated monument in an empty wilderness. It was one half of a complex whole. Here at Durrington Walls was its counterpart, a bustling, noisy, vibrant place for the living. But if this was the city of life, what did that make the silent, eternal circle of stone just a short journey away? The discovery of Durrington Walls provided the key to unlocking the landscape's deeper meaning. It revealed a profound duality, a carefully constructed cosmology written across the Salisbury Plain. Archaeologists now believe this was a ritual landscape designed to separate the world of the living from the realm of the ancestors. Durrington Walls, with its temporary wooden structures and evidence of feasting, was the land of the living. Stonehenge, with its permanent, unyielding stone, was the land of the dead. Connecting these two domains was a sacred pathway. The river Avon, flowing between the two sites, acted as a ceremonial conduit, a transition between realms. Processions would have begun at the settlement, traveling along the river before proceeding up the grand ceremonial path known as the Avenue, leading directly to the entrance of Stonehenge. This journey was a physical and spiritual transition, moving from the transient world of wood and life to the eternal domain of stone and the ancestors. The evidence for Stonehenge's role as a place for the deceased is compelling. From its earliest phase, it was a cemetery. The 56 pits known as the Aubrey Holes, once thought to hold timber posts, were found to contain the cremated remains of at least 60 individuals, men, women, and children. They represent the founding dynasty, the elite ancestors for whom the entire monument was built. For them, and for the generations that followed, Stonehenge was not simply a temple for worship. It was a memorial, a mausoleum, a physical manifestation of their lineage. It was a place where the spirits of the departed could be honored and consulted. By building in stone, they were ensuring that the memory of their ancestors would endure forever, literally setting their legacy in stone. The monument became a powerful symbol of permanence and continuity in a world of constant change. It connected the living to their past, anchoring their community to a sacred lineage that stretched back through time, all culminating in this final, silent resting place. To stand within Stonehenge is to experience more than just a visual spectacle. There is a palpable feeling to the space, a change in the very air. Modern science suggests this is no illusion. The builders of Stonehenge were not only masters of engineering and astronomy, they were masters of sound. The field of archaeoacoustics, the study of sound in ancient spaces, has revealed that the monument was a precisely engineered acoustic environment. Researchers entering the circle with modern sound equipment have made a remarkable discovery. The arrangement of the stones dramatically manipulates sound waves. The massive, flat-faced sarsen stones act as powerful sound reflectors. They bounce sound back into the center of the circle, creating a complex pattern of echoes and reverberations. This effect would have made speech difficult to understand for anyone standing outside the circle, effectively creating a private, sacred space for those within. In contrast, the smaller, rougher bluestones seem to absorb sound, preventing it from becoming a chaotic wash of noise. The result is an environment that feels both intimate and grand. Chants, music from primitive flutes, or the rhythmic beat of a drum would have been amplified and enhanced, taking on an otherworldly quality. The lintels overhead would have further contained the sound, creating an experience akin to being inside a building, but open to the sky. It is a space designed for performance and ritual. Imagine a ceremony at dusk, the flickering firelight casting long shadows from the stones. The voice of a priest or shaman would resonate with unusual power, seeming to come from the stones themselves. The experience would have been immersive and transportive, intentionally designed to separate participants from the mundane world outside and connect them to the spiritual realm. The builders clearly understood that to create a truly sacred space, one must engage all the senses. They sculpted the light with astronomical alignments, and they sculpted sound with the very placement of the stones, turning the circle into a giant acoustic instrument. While Stonehenge served as a celestial calendar and a temple for the ancestors, another compelling theory has emerged, suggesting a more personal, urgent purpose. Could this great monument have also been a place of healing, a Lourdes of the Neolithic age? The strongest clue lies not in the local sarsen's, but in the smaller bluestones. Geologists have definitively traced their origin to the Preseli Hills in western Wales, over 150 miles away. This region has been associated for millennia with sacred springs and healing traditions. It is highly probable that the bluestones were not chosen for their size or strength, but because they were believed to possess curative or magical properties. Transporting these stones over such an immense distance was a phenomenal undertaking, suggesting they were considered immensely special. This theory is powerfully supported by the human remains found buried around the monument. A significant number of the skeletons show evidence of severe, debilitating physical ailments. One man had a badly damaged knee that would have caused him constant discomfort. Another had a serious skull injury. Isotope analysis reveals that many of these individuals were not local. Like the bluestones themselves, they had traveled vast distances to reach Stonehenge. They were pilgrims, undertaking an arduous journey in the desperate hope of a cure. The act of chipping away at the bluestones, a practice evident from the countless marks on their surfaces, may have been part of this healing ritual. Visitors would take away small fragments as talismans or relics, imbued with the stone's perceived power. This transforms our perception of the site. It was not just for the healthy and the powerful. It was a place of hope for the unwell and the infirm. The journey itself was likely part of the cure, a testament of faith. Stonehenge, then, was a multifaceted sanctuary, a place to track the heavens, to honor the ancestors, and to seek relief from the pains of the mortal world, drawing people from across the ancient world to the magic of its stones. The image is powerful, almost cinematic. Robed figures with long white beards, sickles in hand, gathering by moonlight within the ancient circle of stones to perform mysterious rites. This is the Stonehenge of popular imagination, a grand temple for the Celtic priests known as the Druids. It is a compelling story, one that has captivated artists, poets, and mystics for centuries. It is also a story that is almost entirely incorrect. The connection between Stonehenge and the Druids is a relatively modern invention, born from the minds of 17th and 18th century antiquarians. In 1663, John Aubrey was the first to formally propose the theory, arguing that the monument's scale and complexity must have been the work of these revered ancient priests. A century later, William Stukeley, a doctor and archaeologist, expanded on the idea with immense enthusiasm. He mapped the site, studied its alignments, and produced elaborate drawings depicting Druidic ceremonies, effectively cementing the link in the public consciousness. For Stukeley, Stonehenge was the cathedral of the British Druids. The problem with this romantic notion is a simple matter of time. Modern archaeology, through precise radiocarbon dating, has definitively shown that the last major construction phase at Stonehenge concluded around 1500 BCE. The historical Druids, on the other hand, were a feature of the Iron Age, flourishing more than 1,000 years later. They were the priests of the Celtic peoples who arrived in Britain long after the final stone was set in place. The people who built Stonehenge were Neolithic and Bronze Age farmers, separated from the Druids by a chasm of time as wide as the one that separates the Druids from us. The historical Druids left no grand stone monuments. Their sacred spaces were natural groves and clearings, their beliefs passed down orally, not carved in stone. The Romans, who documented and ultimately suppressed the Druidic orders, make no mention of them using Stonehenge. The myth, however, proved more resilient than the facts. It inspired a revival movement, and today, modern Druid orders gather at Stonehenge to mark the solstices. Their connection is a spiritual one, a modern faith seeking roots in an ancient landscape. But their presence is a testament to the monument's power to inspire, not a continuation of an ancient tradition. The story of the Druids filled a vacuum of knowledge, providing a simple answer to a complex puzzle. But it obscured the deeper truth, that for millennia before and after the Celts arrived, the monument's original purpose had already faded into an impenetrable silence. After the final Sarsen trilithon was hoisted into place, a great stillness descended upon Salisbury Plain. The monumental building project, which had consumed generations of effort, came to an end. The people who had invested so much into this stone circle moved on, their society changed, and their specific rituals faded from memory. For the next 3,000 years, Stonehenge entered a period we can call the Long Silence. It was no longer a place of active construction, but it never entirely lost its significance. The surrounding landscape remained a deeply important ceremonial area. Throughout the Bronze Age, high-status individuals were laid to rest in burial mounds, or barrows, that commanded views of the ancient stones. The graves of the Amesbury Archer and the Bush Barrow chieftain, filled with gold, copper, and finely crafted objects, show that being buried near the monument conferred immense prestige. These people were not the builders, but their descendants or successors who still revered the site as a sacred domain of the ancestors. When the Romans arrived in Britain, they encountered a monument that was already an ancient relic. They left offerings, coins, and pieces of pottery, suggesting they viewed it as a place of interest, perhaps a tourist attraction of their time. But there is no evidence they co-opted it for their own worship or attempted to understand its celestial alignments. They were practical conquerors, and Stonehenge was a curious artifact of a people long gone. As the Roman Empire crumbled and the Anglo-Saxons established their kingdoms, the monument receded further into the realm of legend. Without a written history or cultural memory of its purpose, new stories were invented to explain its miraculous existence. In the 12th century, the chronicler Geoffrey of Monmouth provided the most famous of these tales. He wrote that the great stones were magical, brought from a mythical mountain in Ireland by the wizard Merlin to serve as a memorial for British nobles. For medieval society, Stonehenge was not a work of human engineering, but a product of sorcery, a landmark imbued with supernatural power. Through these centuries, the stones stood against the wind and rain, some falling, some sinking into the earth, their original meaning lost beneath layers of folklore and myth. The silence was not one of emptiness, but of transformation, as the monument evolved from a living temple into a silent, enigmatic giant sleeping in the heart of the English landscape. The age of myth began to recede with the dawn of the 20th century. A new kind of inquiry arrived at Stonehenge, armed not with legends of wizards, but with the methodical tools of science. The goal was no longer to speculate, but to excavate, to measure, and to analyze. The first major modern dig began in 1901, led by Professor William Gowland. With careful precision, he re-erected a leaning sarsen stone and, in the process, conducted a limited excavation. His meticulous work provided the first solid archaeological evidence that the monument dated to the Bronze Age, far older than the Druids. This was just the beginning. The mid-20th century saw extensive excavations led by archaeologists Richard Atkinson, Stuart Piggott, and John F. S. Stone. Their work defined our understanding of Stonehenge for over 50 years. They painstakingly uncovered the sequence of construction, identifying the three main phases of the monument, from the early earthwork ditch to the final arrangement of sarsen and bluestones. They unearthed tools, antler picks, and stone mauls, revealing the techniques of the builders. But the true revolution in understanding has come in our own century. Technology has given us senses the early excavators could only dream of. Ground-penetrating radar and magnetometry surveys have allowed archaeologists to peer beneath the soil without digging a single trench, revealing a hidden landscape of forgotten pits, post holes, and pathways. Laser scanning has created a perfect three-dimensional digital model of the stones, allowing for precise analysis of their surfaces and alignments. Perhaps the most groundbreaking advances have come from biochemistry. Strontium isotope analysis, a technique that can identify the geology of the area where a person or animal spent their early life, has been applied to remains found at the site. The results were astonishing. The analysis of human bones from the burial sites revealed that many individuals were not local. They had traveled hundreds of miles, from the far reaches of Britain, to be at Stonehenge. The same was true for animal remains found at the nearby settlement of Durrington Walls, indicating that people brought livestock from all over the island for massive ceremonial feasts. Science has stripped away the romance of wizards and priests, replacing it with a far more profound story, one of a unified Neolithic people, capable of incredible organization and driven by a shared vision to create a monument for an entire nation. Science has provided us with a remarkable blueprint of Stonehenge. We know what it is made of, where the materials came from, and a detailed timeline of its construction. We have learned about the people who gathered there, what they ate, and where they traveled from. We have answered the what, the when, and the how. Yet, for all our advanced technology and meticulous research, the most fundamental question of all remains stubbornly unanswered. Why? Why was Stonehenge built? The truth is, there is no single, universally accepted answer, only a collection of compelling and sometimes overlapping theories. Was it a temple, a place of worship aligned to the movements of the sun and moon? The solstice alignments are too precise to be coincidental. On the longest day of the year, the rising sun aligns perfectly with the heel stone, casting a beam of light into the heart of the circle. This suggests a profound connection to the cosmos and the changing seasons, vital for an agricultural society. Or was it a place of healing? The discovery of numerous human remains in and around the monument, many showing signs of severe illness or physical trauma, supports this idea. Some archaeologists propose that the smaller bluestones, brought with immense difficulty from Wales, were believed to possess curative properties, making Stonehenge a Neolithic Lourdes, a destination for pilgrims seeking miraculous intervention. Another powerful theory frames it as a monument to the ancestors. The nearby settlement of Durrington Walls, with its wooden structures, is seen as the land of the living, connected by a ceremonial avenue to Stonehenge, the domain of the dead, built in eternal stone. It was a place where the worlds of the living and the spirits of the departed could connect. Perhaps it was all of these things at once. It might have been a symbol of unity, a collaborative project designed to bring together disparate tribes from across Britain, cementing alliances and forging a new collective identity. And the final great question is why it all ended. After 1,500 years of continuous development, why did the people of Britain stop building at Stonehenge? Was it the result of a cultural shift, a new religion sweeping the land? Or was it a societal collapse brought on by climate change or conflict? Without any written records from its creators, Stonehenge holds its ultimate secrets close. It stands not as a definitive statement, but as a permanent question mark etched into the landscape, a challenge to our modern certainty. 5,000 years. It is a span of time that is difficult for the human mind to comprehend. The Great Pyramids of Giza were yet to be built when the first earthwork was dug at Stonehenge. The Roman Empire rose and fell. Entire languages have been spoken and have vanished into silence. Through it all, the stones have endured. Today, Stonehenge is more than just an archaeological site. It is a global icon, a symbol of mystery, endurance, and the deepest roots of human history. As a UNESCO World Heritage Site, it is recognized as a treasure belonging to all of humanity. Its unmistakable silhouette has been endlessly reproduced in art, film, and literature, becoming a universal shorthand for the ancient and the unknowable. It is a focal point of national identity for Britain, a tangible link to a past that predates any king or queen, any sense of Englishness or Britishness. But its legacy is not static. It is a living place, a site of pilgrimage for nearly 1 million visitors each year. They come from every corner of the globe, each bringing their own perspectives and seeking their own connections. For some, it is a spiritual center, a place of palpable energy where modern druids and pagans gather to celebrate the turning of the seasons, forging a new relationship with an ancient sacred space. For others, it is an intellectual puzzle, a marvel of prehistoric engineering that challenges our assumptions about the capabilities of early societies. This enduring fame brings its own challenges. The monument faces constant pressure from the modern world. The hum of traffic from the nearby roads is a constant intrusion on its ancient stillness. Debates rage over how best to preserve the site and its surrounding landscape while accommodating the public's desire to experience it. A controversial proposal to build a tunnel for the road is the latest chapter in a long story of human interaction with the stones, highlighting the ongoing tension between preservation and progress. Stonehenge's ultimate legacy may be its profound silence. It was built by a people who left no writing, no portraits of their leaders, no grand declarations of their triumphs. Instead, they left only this: a circle of stone, aligned with the heavens. It is a monument not to an individual, but to a community. It is a testament to the universal human drive to create meaning, to find order in the cosmos, and to leave a mark that says, simply, "We were here."